Hello and welcome to Rocket Fuel, your daily update of everything that's happening in Rocket Pool and Ethereum. My name is Wack. Today is June 24th and today's episode is going to cover some oDAO news, an update from the oDAO. We're going to be talking about the deposit pool, giving an update on what's happening there. On the Ethereum side, we're going to be talking about inflows into SBET. We're going to be talking about inflows into the ETH ETF. We're going to be talking about a whole more as well. So let's get started.
10, 9, ignition sequence start, 6.
Okay, so we're going to start with this update from the oDAO, and here the oDAO have set up a new proposal, which is proposal number 20, and this is a proposal to remove Gitcoin from the oDAO. Now, this had been telegraphed a while ago with the team removing 2 of their seats and saying that Gitcoin wanted to remove their seat as well. And that is now, the vote for that is pending. Now, the reason why you have this 7-day vote period is because if everything reaches quorum really quickly, you can execute the vote. And there might be a situation where, something goes through quorum, reaches quorum, and then it's bad, and then bad things can happen. So the 7-day pause gives oDAO members a chance to look at what's going on, what's happening with everything, and then, vote on that. So, as always, this will almost definitely pass the vote. The oDAO members will vote for it and will reach quorum, and Gitcoin will be removed. And there's nothing to worry about here. This was planned, and just like we had the 2 team seats removed recently as well. So this is good. The oDAO now will be closer in line with what the community wanted in terms of number of seats for the oDAO. And the remaining oDAO members, of course, will get a little bit of a pay rise because they are going to be splitting the same size pot amongst fewer members. So that's nice for them too. So yeah, this should start in 7 days' time. And then once that starts, I expect the voting to be done within a few days. And then Gitcoin will leave the oDAO. Okay, let's talk about the deposit pool a little bit because we haven't mentioned it in a few days. There have been some nice deposits coming into the deposit pool over the last couple of days. There was this one that was 530 ETH. That was really nice. That was a couple of days ago. There are a couple here that were really interesting that happened today, actually. So this one here at 836 was 136 ETH, which of course is really nice. And then an hour later, there was 336 ETH deposit into the deposit pool as well. And this one, as you might notice, the sender address is the same as 0xC1C7BE6A. It's the same in both these situations. So you might be like, hey, who's this person accumulating? We'll come to that in a second. But before we come to that, we can see that the queue is actually looking quite nice right now. It's not too long. It peaked recently at around 90 validators in the queue, and it currently stands at around 80 validators in the queue, somewhere around there. And actually, this has been updated in a couple of days, so it's actually a little bit shorter now with those deposits today. And then the amount of time that people have waited in the queue is about 12 days. This is as of a couple of days ago, but the actual time is a bit shorter now. So let's go back to the Discord and first of all find out who it was who made those transactions, and that was ETH Plus transactions. Now we're going to be talking about ETH Plus a little bit more later, but it's basically a basket of LSTs, and rETH is one of those, and they are minting rETH, which is pretty cool. So yeah, this is the reserve protocol here. This is the product, and it has 94,000 ETH in there. And you can see here that it's a basket of LSTs, and they have 8% Stader, they have 20% Frax, 50% Lido's wrapped staked ETH, and they have around 21% of rETH in there. So, according to market share, we're punching well above our weight in this category, which is really cool. And they've been responsible for minting 19,766 ETH worth of rETH, which is actually really amazing. So that's really great. More power to them. And yeah, they're getting pretty nice. They're getting nice rewards for that. So that's really, really cool to see. So keep that up, ETH Plus. Now, actually going back and having a look at the queue, sorry, I had that information open up. Actually, let me just go here. we can see that the queue right now is 61 validators long, and the longest wait a person has had is 10 days, which isn't actually too bad, especially with gas prices as low as they are. They'll be getting online really quickly, and they'll be earning rewards really quickly, which of course is awesome. So we need 1,880 ETH to DQ all the mini pools, and then of course there is a deposit pool of 18,000 ETH waiting as well. So there's enough space for just under 20,000 ETH to be deposited, which is nice. Now, you might be thinking, hey, the queue a few weeks ago was around 300, 400 validators long. What happened to that? Where did all that go? And the reality is, I think that people have paused staking with starting new validators with Rocket Pool, and the reason for that is because they're waiting for Saturn 1, and Saturn 1 should be here in a couple of months' time. If you spend gas to start a validator, even gas being quite low, it could take you, a few weeks or a little while to break even. I think some of those people who might be waiting for Saturn 1 to come along, so they only have to spend that gas once, because, for Saturn 1, you'll have to exit your validators and re-queue and restart your validators after that. So yeah, that's kind of where we stand with the Saturn 1 and the queue length. But I think it's just a mixture of people not wanting to spend gas twice, and they'd rather save that money and then just join the stake with Saturn 1. So yeah, this is pretty cool. This looks really good, and I think that it just makes sense that starting new validators kind of slow down a little bit. Okay, we got an update from the Star project, and this is a project to incentivize minting of rETH across different treasury and different bodies across the crypto ecosystem. And SignalXU, who is the person who is kind of like the manager of this, is giving an update here, which is actually really cool. So this has got some updates. This is from today, saying after discussions have been confirmed that the ETH plus basket composition will remain unchanged, so the current share of rETH will not be affected for now. So there was the idea of trying to increase the share of rETH up to 25% instead of 21%, and that hasn't gone through. But they're saying that there's another basket, LST basket called BSD ETH. This is our team is finalizing the contract development, and the audit has been requested by the other side, and our team will support and facilitate that process. So on the incentive side, they plan to submit a proposal for 0.075 to 0.08% incentives for BSD ETH. There's a notable increase from the previous 0.05%, mainly to signal a stronger commitment. Now waiting for the plugin to be finalized before moving the proposal to an on-chain vote. That's really cool. And then they had a meeting with the usual team. They requested incentives passed along to the IMC for further evaluation. And with ETHCC, SignalXU will be attending ETHCC, using the opportunity to pitch to existing leads and establish contacts in person. So also shouting out Grant and Langers there as well. So this is happening. There are some questions about the incentives, where they're going to come from, and it looks like the money that's been allocated to these organizations as an incentive to mint some rETH from the GMC, that will be used passing it along to the customers instead of to themselves. So that's really nice there. So BSD ETH currently has no rETH, so they're looking to add rETH to that, and ETH Plus has a 21% share. So they're two separate LST baskets. I think rETH will be swapped on base. The amount of rETH will adjust dynamically based on a BSD ETH supply, aiming to maintain a consistent 20% share in the basket. So there's some information there as well if you want it. But yeah, that's really cool. Thanks SignalXU for that. Okay, I'm going to talk about Liquity for a second and how rETH is working with Liquity. And Liquity actually had a really cool update here about Bold. So they're saying that borrowing rates for Bold by depositing wrapped ST-ETH or rETH is actually averaging around 3.5 and 4% respectively. So these are some of the lowest rates that you're getting in DeFi. So if you deposit your rETH or wrapped ST-ETH into Aave or other services, the rate that you're getting is a lot higher. That's because people can kind of tweak their rates themselves, and this is kind of where the community's ending up. So it says stability pooled yield bearing variants of bold in S bold and YSY bold are currently earning around 5.5%, which is really nice. It says these can be further utilized on the likes of Spectra Finance and Pendle to get up to 15%. So this is alternatively bold holders can provide liquidity for bold USDC on Curve Finance and a Kubo protocol to earn similar yield as well. And this is all these actions are eligible for airdrop rewards from the 20 plus forks on top of the yield. So keep your exposure to ETH, set your own rates, mint bold, capture the yield. So that's really cool. So the thing that I want to highlight here, of course, is that if you want to borrow stables against your rETH, one of the best places to do that is with Liquity, and you can basically get really good rates for that. So yeah, good stuff. Liquity, always huge fan of Liquity and what they're doing, and V2 looks like it's working really nicely. Okay, let's move on to some Ethereum news now. And the Ethereum news of the day to get started with is a purchase made by SBET. So we get these, weekly tweets from Michael Saylor talking about how Strategy has purchased more Bitcoin. Well, I'm really looking forward to these weekly updates about SBET acquiring ETH, and it looks like they are buying nice amounts of ETH, which is really cool. So here, Fabrice says, strategic ETH reserve update. SBET has acquired 12,206 ETH at an average price of 2,513 ETH, and they now have a holding of 188,477 ETH, which is absolutely awesome to see. And here's the link. Sharp link. SBET, they're putting out that tweet, saying what it's coming like. So it looks like they're going to flip the Ethereum Foundation within a few weeks, which of course is really cool. And they're adding up the supply really fast. So the strategic ETH reserve now is currently sitting at around 1% of the total ETH supply, which is of course really great to see. And if you want updates on what's happening with the strategic ETH reserve, the not like a government ETH reserve, but like companies, organizations, groups around the world, then check out Fabrice's website, strategicethreserve.xyz. It's really cool and got some really good information there. Okay, so it's not just Joe Lubin and SBET who are buying ETH, but these ETFs are adding a whole lot of ETH as well. So this is an update from Fidelity, and their customers added 27,175 ETH yesterday to their crypto treasury. And here there was a question by Haniabo actually saying that is it going to Fidelity's treasury or to its ETF, because the person writing this tweet said it's going to its treasury. Jasper replied, ETF, I'm pretty sure. Now, if we actually have a look, we'll see that the ETF actually had a record. Let's wait for that. But the ETF actually had a a strong inflow day yesterday of 100 million ETH, and that $60 million worth of ETH did go into Fidelity's ETF, not into their treasury. So the language of that previous tweet was imprecise, to say the least. Of course, if it's going to the actual Fidelity treasury, that's a whole different ballgame. That would be absolutely amazing. But still, we'll take this. This is really good. That is a very strong showing day for the ETF. $100.7 million flowing in there, and that has taken us over, put us at an all-time high of $4 billion plus in the ETFs. Now, here we have a tweet, from Alex saying that this is actually the anniversary of the ETFs launching. So he's saying Ethereum ETFs has hit a record $4 billion in inflows in their first year. Happy birthday to Ethereum ETFs, which launched 1 year ago. Yesterday was another new all-time high record for assets under management for the ETFs, and the first time they exceeded $4 billion. So that is $4 billion of net flows, which is absolutely awesome to see. So huge success. Now you might be like, hey, $4 billion, that's nothing. That is table stakes. That's hardly any money at all. The ETFs have been a disaster, etc. That actually couldn't be further from the truth. In terms of ETFs, this is actually one of the best performing ETFs ever in terms of inflows in the first year. And it's just when we compare it against the Bitcoin ETFs, that's when people are like, oh, this ETH ETFs are not performing as well, blah blah blah, and that's fine. I can acknowledge that that point to some extent. But objectively speaking, just as an ETF on its own, these have been extremely strong ETFs and with very strong performance overall. Like, BlackRock have put in $5.3 billion worth of crypto into the ETFs, Fidelity $1.6 billion. And then we have Bitwise with 345 million, 21 shares, 20 million, and then VanEck with 140 million. And then the thing that really messed things up was the Grayscale conversion, and they have outflows of 4.5 billion, nearly 4.25 billion. So that is really the number that's hurting the ETH ETFs. But overall, the inflows have been fantastic. So that is a huge milestone for 1 year, $4 billion. Good stuff. Okay, there was this article released last week about future-proofing pre-confirmations, and I thought it might be interesting to mention this because of the discussion that's been happening around what block building might look like going into the future, whether we're going to reduce the slot times and keep the structure of the slot the same as we have it now, whether we're going to introduce EPBS, and whether that's going to change the way the blocks are made across the whole protocol, and therefore have different paths basically. So it really does look like Ethereum is literally in the fork in the road now about what path we're going to choose. Now, what's really interesting is that there's this idea of pre-confirmations, and pre-confirmations basically are a type of commitment from the block proposers and builders that give users assurances that their transaction will be included like in the next block basically, or very soon. So most pre-confirmation protocols have been designed and that is with Ethereum's current design in mind, but with EIPs, the block structure could change, and some of these EIPs directly affect the compatibility of pre-confirmation protocols, either by design or a side effect. So there's some research here, there's quite a lot of research here, and you can learn all about how blocks are built, what pre-confirmations are, how they work, and what kind of things the current design allows, and how it might work with different kinds of EIPs and how those might impact pre-confirmations and the building of blocks. So if you are interested in block building and pre-confirmations, then definitely check this out. One of the things about pre-confirmations that's really interesting is that people think that they would help with interoperability between the L2s and the layer 1 when you get to native and base rollups, because the slot times on Ethereum, the block times will be 12 seconds, 6 seconds, whatever it is, whereas on the L2s they have sub-second block time. Arbitrum has a 400 millisecond block time. I think some of them are working towards a 250 millisecond block time. So the way that would work is they would have pre-confirmations for users with some kind of economic guarantees, like slashable stake and that kind of stuff, where the proposer would guarantee that those transactions will be included in the next Ethereum block, and that would be one way to speed up interoperability between the L2s and the L1. But yeah, if you want to know about how this all works, then check out this ETH Researcher forum post by a couple of people from the Nethermind team. So yeah, good stuff. Okay, in some other news, there's some interesting stuff happening in the US from the Fed, and the Fed are now saying that banks are free to conduct crypto activities. So, we've seen loosening of rules coming from the SEC. We've also seen, some information coming from the CTFC, and now the Fed as well, saying that banks are free to conduct crypto activities. I think this just opens the door for that TradFi kind of immersion into crypto, and it's definitely going to be a really interesting time going forwards to see how crypto natives and these cypherpunk values that some of us hold kind of come up against it's permissionless, right? Like, so whoever wants to build on Ethereum, they can, and whether that's going to be banks and central governments, they will have equal access to block space, just the same way that you and I and everyone else will. Whoever pays the gas fees will get their transactions included, basically, and that's the censorship resistance and the credible neutrality of Ethereum, right? Like, those are the values that we our strongest. Credible neutrality, I think I've said this before on Rocket Fuel, is that I really do believe it's the linchpin value of blockchains, and every other value, adds to greater credible neutrality, and that's a perspective that I've had for a while. But to maintain credible neutrality then means that you can't differentiate against banks coming on chain. So that's going to be really interesting to see how it works out, how it plays out over the next couple of years. With stable coins, it looks like the Genius Act is going to go through Congress really soon. It looks like there's bipartisan discussions happening in committees in the House and the Senate, with market structure bills. So we'll be getting rules about regulations and tests for decentralization, all that kind of stuff. So there's going to be a lot of very interesting things coming towards crypto in the coming months. I wouldn't be surprised if we have the Genius Act within the next couple of weeks, and then some kind of market structure bill within the next 6 months. That would be huge. So that's definitely something that I'm keeping my eye on. But it's going to be really interesting to see, like I said, how these TradFi banks, institutions, like financial services companies, all of these things, how they kind of come on chain and what they're going to be doing on chain. It's going to be very, very exciting. And of course, as always, I say this, there's no guarantee that, some of this activity is going to happen on Ethereum. But if you look at the existing activities, the vast majority of it is happening on Ethereum and its L2s. So I wouldn't at all be surprised if that continues to be the case. And finally, getting people on chain, it's not just companies and organizations that will be coming on chain, but it looks like Chainlink and Mastercard have partnered together to give access to 3 billion Mastercard holders the ability to buy crypto directly on chain. So this again is just making it easier and easier for people to get access to crypto. I'm not sure where this will be going, but it looks like they're just making a huge push to get crypto on chain, get people on chain. And I wouldn't be surprised if they start trying to get their customers to deal with stable coins instead of dollars. That would be huge. Well, they would just pocket the Fed funding rate, right? So they have the potential here to make billions of dollars a year if they can get their customers onboarded into crypto and then use crypto rails for their business. It's just like an astronomical amount of money that they could potentially access here by swapping all their customers away from dollars and into stable coins. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. But on that note, I'm going to end today's episode. So thank you all for watching, listening, and being part of the Rocket Fuel community. I hope you all have a lovely day ahead, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye.